Those airstrikes adding further tension, of course, to the whole region. And now the war in Gaza is facing a legal challenge as the International Court of Justice is hearing claims that Israel has a plan to destroy Gaza, which comes from the highest level of state.
Yeah, the case has been brought by South Africa, and its lawyers accuse Israel of genocide.
There have been protests outside The Hague by pro-Israel supporters, and Israel will present its defence later today and has vehemently rejected the accusations as baseless.
Well, let's talk to former member of the Israeli parliament, Dr. Einat Wilf, who joins us now. Good to see you again, Doctor. How concerning is it for Israel that this case has been brought?
It is troubling, but not in the sense that most people think. What is going on in the court is a strategy that has been at play for decades, really, which I call the placard strategy. You see it in placards in anti-Israel demonstrations that equate Israel, Zionism, sometimes just the Star of David, with all of the world's evils: colonialism, imperialism, racism, apartheid, Nazism, genocide. This strategy gets laundered through international bodies. The Zionism is Racism resolution that was brought to the UN by the Soviet Union and the Arab world in 1975. The Durban Conference in South Africa in 2001, a UN conference against racism that turned into a hate fest against Israel and began the rise of the charge of apartheid. And now we're seeing another page out of this book of laundering the equation of Israel with all of the world's ills through international bodies, which gives them a kind of authority. That's why it launders them. And the reason that it is disturbing is that once you create a refrain in people's minds that Israel, Zionism, the Star of David are all evil, you equate them with the greatest evils in the world, then you create a global mental situation where people say, well, anything is justified to eradicate this evil. This is why we had such exhilarated responses after October 7th, because people were already in the mindset of, well, they had it coming to them. And in that sense, I find it quite disturbing, not the specific process, but what's going on is the process of creating a mindset that said, anything that will be done. And as we know, Hamas and its supporters have made it clear that they will continue to do October 7th. They are committed to the Jewish state not existing in any borders in any shape, way, or form. And what's happening with South Africa with this charge is creating a global environment that says, of course, this evil has to be eradicated.
Are you fearful that Israel may be losing the war of words, if you like?
This is always a concern. One of the things that we need to understand is precisely because this is an ongoing strategy that is not related to any particular element. Once you see the span of it over decades, the fact that it was launched by the Soviet Union in the 60s and very effectively brought through international bodies, we need to understand that that's what we're up against. We need to expose the world that this is where it leads to. I'm sure some of you have seen the placard that shows a Star of David inside a trash bin with the title, "Keep the World Clean." This is the arc that we're on. Once you equate Israel, Zionism, and the Star of David with all of the evils in the world, then you get people to believe that keeping the world clean requires eradicating that Star of David and its collective existence. And the idea that the collective Jewish existence is what stands between this world and utopia is a very ancient idea that has never brought the world any good. And yes, I am concerned about it, but it comes from some very, very ancient ideas.
What's your perspective on what we've seen happen overnight with these attacks on Houthi rebels? Because, of course, this is all interlinked, isn't it? I mean, although it's a thin excuse that the Houthis have been saying, well, we're attacking any vessel linked to Israel. I mean, it doesn't seem like that would be the case. But they're using that as an excuse. They're backed by Iran, which is obviously behind Hezbollah. This whole is this a step towards this regional conflict escalating?
You're certainly speaking of the whole picture, and that's exactly how it works. It's not a thin excuse in the sense that this is the classic excuse. Failed societies, whether it's Yemen, whether it's South Africa, whether it's many countries in the Arab world, whether it was Soviet Union, failed societies have always used anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, the scapegoating of Jews as a way to redirect away from their failure. And we have to admit the following. The Palestinians would have interested no one had their battle not been against the Jewish state. As a result, for decades, they have received the support of every anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist ideology in the world. Right now, Iran is one of the countries that is the main promoters and supporters of that scapegoating ideology in the Islamic world. We see it rise in the heirs of the Soviet Union in the West. But yes, once you begin to see how it's all linked, failed societies using an ancient scapegoating mechanism to redirect from their own failure, it hasn't ended well in the past, and we need to see it for what it is.